Hey everybody, it's X, and it is finally time for the Murders at Karlov Manor Arena Open. Today we're going to be playing some competitive best-of-1 Murders at Karlov Manor sealed, trying to get 7 wins before 3 match losses, because if we can accomplish that, we will make it to Day 2, a best-of-3 draft event with potential cash prizes on the line. Without further ado, let's bust open our packs and see what we get to play with today. So we do have quite a few rares opened up here, but they are definitely all over the place. My favorite being the Azoni for sealed, which tends to be a slower format. This thing is just a whole army in a can collecting evidence to make a bunch of spiders with menace and reach. I think this is the most busted rare we have for sealed. We've got several that don't really do anything, like Leyline of the Guild Pact. Connecting the dots I think is pretty weak in sealed. Barbed Servitor, we'd have to be super aggressive and against something that's more defensive for it to be super good. Just not the most premium cards there. And of course a couple dual lands as well are just going to be good if we want to splash around with those colors. We do have a couple really good aggressive rares with Pyrotechnic Performer in red and 10th District Hero in white. Both of these are just really big creatures for their mana cost that can help get a bunch of damage in, so those are great as well. And then of course one board wipe if we go for a more controlling white deck. So 4 really solid rares overall. But they are kind of in every different color, so that is slightly awkward, but still definitely some power in this sealed pool. Let's see what we've got from our commons and uncommons, though, and that'll probably tell us which of these rares we really get to build with. For our colorless cards, we've got a couple Sanitation Automaton, Fine Filler to up our 2-drop count and just get our deck flowing a little better with that surveillability, so those are fine. Magnifying Glass, however, is not really. It's just too slow to be worth a full card. Public Thoroughfare is fine if we're going to be splashing a million colors here, but it is a very slow land, hitting the board tapped and making us tap another permanent to play it. For our multicolored cards, Flotsam Jetsam, really slow, doesn't play particularly well. Buried in the Garden is pretty fantastic, so excellent removal out of green-white that also fixes us. So if we go like green-white-black, then we get to play Azoni and our white rares, so that could be a pretty great spot to be. Quintorius is a cool build around, but not something we want to just dive deep into. 10th Street Gossip, again, just kind of a build around if we have a ton of disguise cards. Scoundrels, whatever, but Whipcracker's pretty great in green-black, and of course we have our green-black dual land, so I am liking the looks of Golgari here. Juggler is very narrow for a deck that can suspect a lot of creatures. Coerce to Kill is a great 2-for-1 removal spell, but the other blue-black cards are kind of slow, not the most exciting. I guess Drag the Canal is fine value. 2 mana for an instant speed 2/2, and you gain 2 Surveil 2 and Investigate if a creature died. So that can be pretty sweet. The right position. Some fine black-white cards and some fine blue-white cards. But nothing super exciting there. Yeah, I'm the most pumped about our green-black and our green-white card, the Buried in the Garden, so we'll definitely keep that in mind. Let's check all the colors individually now, see what's looking good and what's looking weak. In white, we have some really premium commons with cards like Inside Source, spitting out 2 bodies off of the 1 creature. Really good removal like Makeshift Binding that also gains us some life to win any races. We've got the board wipe, of course, with no witnesses. We've got the really good aggressive creature with 10th District Hero. Collects evidence in the grave to become really big for its mana cost. Museum Night Watch is solid. As a disguise card, you flip it up, then trade it off, and it replaces itself with a 2/2. Vigilante is pretty solid. We've got plenty of cards you can put the counter onto. Pretty big fan of our white overall. For our blue, we are very low on cards here, and the ones that we have aren't incredible. My favorite cards being like Deduce for a draw 2 is pretty good, Out Cold for a tempo play, and Cold Case Cracker is a flyer that gives you 2-for-1 value, letting you draw a card after it dies. It's pretty decent as well. But Analyst doesn't do a whole ton. Dramatic Accusation, some of the weaker removal in the format, and Sudden Setback as well. A little bit expensive for the tempo kind of removal that it is. So not the most exciting blue, but certainly a couple options if we really wanted to be in the color. Although I think with our rares, we don't really have any reason to dabble with blue unless it looks really good. For black now, we've got Extract the Confession being much easier to cast removal than the Murder, which is exciting too, but if we do go 3 colors, like green, black, white, like we might be doing, the double black could be a bit difficult on this card. For our creatures, there's honestly nothing good here, really. There's like the one Servitor that's kind of interesting, but if we're playing against a deck that's more aggressive than us, we're just going to die for playing this. We really have to be in the aggressive lead for this to play well, either letting us draw those cards to keep flowing or dealing damage to our opponents. If we are on the defensive, it's really hard to spend 4 mana to play a creature that can't even block and then also just start shooting ourselves for damage. So, plays really bad when your opponent's a good aggro deck. And yeah, then we have a bunch of filler commons, like the Assailant and the Stalker are fine cards to flip up late. The Unscrupulous Agent, probably the best common we have here. The Fester Leech is okay if you have some graveyard synergies, which I guess we have a tiny bit of, with Extract the Confession, and then Ozoni as well will want to collect evidence. So, black looks fine, but not super exciting. Most exciting thing about black, of course, is that we've got an Ozoni there. For red now, we actually have a really nice aggressive curve here when you treat these big disguise cards as 3-mana creatures. And these bigger disguise cards, especially the Offender at Larges, can get a lot of damage out of the Pyrotechnic Performer. So like just red-white Boros kind of aggro looks honestly decent here because of how good our white was and how great these aggressive red cards are. Cards like Pyrotechnic Performer just getting a lot of damage early. Red Herring and Bystander making sure that we are curving out and getting damage in early. And then these big top-end flips to get a ton of extra damage out of nowhere can really end a game. We've got solid removal with a Galvanize. We've got a great combat trick with the Chases On. I'm not a particularly big fan of the Connecting the Dots, the Demand Answers, or the Caught Red-Handed, but the rest of these red cards are all pretty great for an aggressive strategy, so we'll have to consider maybe some green-white decks splashing black, or some like just streamlined Boros aggro as 2 places we could be. Finally, last but hopefully not least, we do have green here, which is a little awkward because it's not the deepest color ever and we only have 1 piece of fixing in it. But we do have the green-black dual land. We have the green-white removal spell that gets a mana of any color, so we can still do the green-white splash black thing and use They Went This Way as 1 additional piece of fixing. Yeah, this is 40 cards already, so splash a little bit of black, and we get to cut the filler stuff like Chalk Outline that doesn't really work here. Maybe the Case and the Alibis, the Combat Trick kind of buff sort of spells become definitely weaker. Do we have any green hybrid cards? Not really. Wouldn't really count Flotsam Jetsam. Got the Whipcracker, I guess we can splash in. The Scoundrel is green without needing the black mana. Yeah, this is actually not looking the greatest, honestly. I might just prefer white-black. Splash the green? We can splash the green off of 2 lands minimum. So we put an Ozoni in here. Again, like another peek at these green cards, like Maverick, Tipster, Inspector. We've got fine, cheap green cards, but there's 3 total. And then that's it. It's these 3 cards, a Combat Trick, 1 Fixer, and 1 Glint Weaver at the top end. I think we gain more by running black as a main color than we do by running green. So yeah, we get the Underground Mortuary, and we would also get... We'd splash in the Buried in the Garden, which is awkward because we're just splashing it in as removal at that point, because if we've hit the green source, then that is the color we're splashing for. So Buried in the Garden is worse as removal for this deck than it would have been if green-white was the core, but we do get the Public Thoroughfare as well. Unfortunately, we don't have any of the 1/3s that filter mana, so we don't have any other colorless fixing. So yeah, the mana base isn't great. I guess Scoundrel we can flip up off of black. And I think there's something else we could play. We could splash in a Whipcracker. Probably won't. And we can flip up Granite Witness off of double whites. I mean, there are more cards running black as a core color in this deck, but they are kind of filler, like double repeat offender style stuff. Still don't love the idea of the Servitor, but I think our white is cheap enough and aggressive enough that it could play fine. Don't have much graveyard synergy for the double Fester Leech, it's just the one Azoni for the South Mill. But having the combat trick attached to it on a stick is still nice, even if you don't care about the South Mill. I mean, this is a deck. Not super pumped about it. Got an on the job. Oh, man. Yeah, if we go really aggressive, that could be great. We are at 20 creatures right now, but I'm going to cut the repeat offenders, probably cut the Whip Cracker. Puts us to 17. We can still cut a couple more. Be a little slower, more controlling with like no witnesses here. I think Call a Surprise Witness is okay with really good 3-mana cards to interact with, or to reanimate like inside sources, so I'm fine with that. Not super excited about it. Probably low enough creatures to not run the Consultant. I don't know which is better, Scoundrel or Assailant. They're both not great. I think these would be the next cuts. I guess with double Fester Leech, we keep the Reconstruction in for some more graveyard recursion. We drop an on the job. Consultant. I'll drop one Assailant, one Scoundrel. This is kind of the black-white splash green build. Of course, Arena sees a Granite Witness and it wants an island in here. We do not want that. 13-10-2 is the split. We're at 7 black, 7 white, 3 green sources. 7 black, 7 white. I've got a double black card here that's pretty important. I've got a double white card that's pretty important. Again, white is higher in quantity than black. Yeah, we'll go 8-7-3 then. 8-7-3. I guess that's 9-8-3, because we count Thoroughfare as also white and black mana. This deck looks okay. It's definitely slower and more mid-ranging stuff. That's what Sealed does a lot for the most part. That's what works in Sealed. Like, this is super reasonable. I'm not, like, super pumped about it, but I think it is better than our green-white splash black. I think white is the best of our colors between green, white, and black. So if we save that, look at the deck again, and look at it from green-white, and then splash the black, see how that changes things. I shouldn't have cut the Granite Witness there. Yeah, put that back in. Oh yeah, we've got the automatons as options as well. That is helpful, actually, because we'll have less on-color playables going green here. I think that's what we want. I don't think we're aggressive enough to want the Case of the Trampled Garden, but the card is definitely not bad. Oh, I totally forgot about the Wisp Drinker Vampire and the Soul Search. Yeah, those would both make that that black-white deck even better. And we could splash them in, splashing in the black too. Although I think Soul Search is significantly weaker off of the splash, because you do want to have the mana for that early when your opponent still has plenty of cards to choose from in their hand. So that could be a little awkward. I don't think we want anything else in green. I don't think we're splashing in anything else out of black. Maybe an Extract a Confession. We'll put the rest of the white cards back in so we can reconsider them with the context of our green, see if that changes what we want to cut this time around. Not super likely. So we're at 46 cards right now. We don't want to play the 2-drop on the splash. That's significantly weaker later. Whip Cracker is still okay later in the game, because they are more likely to have a token out at that time. So I don't despise the Whip Cracker splash. I think the Soul Search is already moderately borderline when it's not a splash, because this is a format where impacting the board in the early turns is pretty important. So running a little discard or draw spell early can be disadvantageous. So especially when it's off the splash, I think we just don't run it. Scoundrel's a lot of mana for the flip, and we probably are mainly cutting creatures now at 18 here. Like the rest of our top end, except for like Griff Knot trackers, just kind of a 3-2 flyer, no text. Consultant, we have, you know, double inside source to go with it, but I still like the rest of our on-curve creatures all over that. I think this looks a little bit better to me, honestly, than the black-white version, but I didn't put the Wisp Drinker in the black-white version. That would have improved that a little bit. So I'll take another peek at that with a Wisp Drinker vampire in it, see if that changes anything. 2 more cuts to go still. I mean, we are 15 creatures plus double inside source for going wide, so on the job doesn't seem horrific. Don't know if I love no witnesses in here, though. So, like, there's an argument against running board wipes in a deck that has a good chunk of creatures, even when they're like 5 or 6 mana board wipes that just fully wipe the board, period, and have no downside. So when we have 15 creatures and our board wipe has a downside where our opponent is going to draw a card after the board wipe to help them reestablish or help them regain some of their lost card advantage, like, it becomes an even harder sell. So, like, I think we would have to just build our deck pretty differently if we actually wanted to run this. And then one of these other two, just like a random equipment or the graveyard recursion gets cut here. Could maybe cut both and play an 18th land with these big, really impactful 6 and 7 mana plays, but I think 17's fine. We have Surveil to dig for lands. Actually, quite a lot of it. With Rebel Belt and Double Automaton. And then we also have They Went This Way. That literally pulls out a land, and Buried in the Garden that can ramp up if we have hit our green splash. Or sorry, our... Oh, never mind. The green splash is in the other deck. Never mind. Buried in the Garden is just on color this time. Never mind. So Buried in the Garden is consistent fixing and ramp, which is actually great. Yeah, no, I like this one. I like this build a lot. And this deck can still leverage its aggressive white creatures into trying to outrace slower decks. Because, like, we can still curve out some games with, like, Automaton into Inside Source with just an on the job or a get a leg up in our hand, and we could just start the beat down too. So I like that this can play the aggressive and it's got the big blowout win conditions at the top end too. I quite like this deck. I suppose we have Makeshift Binding, Buried in the Garden, and Extract Confession for removal now. We might not need Make Your Move as well, as that is more narrow removal. But it does happen to be really good against other white decks. If they're using Makeshift Bindings or Buried in the Gardens of their own against our stuff, then that is super sweet. I kind of like running the one copy here. I think I am going to go ahead and drop the board wipe and Surprise Witness and do this, I think. As the build, take another look at our green, white, black, and colorless. Our only colorless card is the Magnifying Glass. I'm not sure about that. Is Tracker just better than a Crowvod Haunch here? Just throw a 16th creature in. Don't hate it. None of these other black cards look super worth splashing. I mean, the only one that could argue is the Servitor or the Reconstruction. Couple value plays, maybe. Or just a disguise card because it can always be played at worst case scenario. But I don't think we're doing any of that. I guess another option is just saying that we are aggressive enough to use another combat trick like Airtight Alibi. It's a lot of mana to hold up, 3, but it can win a combat and give a permanent buff to your creature, or it can counter removal. Or we could just play a case of Trampled Garden to just roll in with more damage. Like, these would be options too to run over the Crowvod Haunch. The Haunch is just like a mediocre equipment early, and then if you don't have the creatures to put it on, you can always cash it out and get some dogs out of it. It's not really good on either half of the card, but the flexibility makes it okay. I think it is our weakest card that we still have in the deck right now. I don't know, I'll keep it in for now. Its ability to make multiple creatures remain relevant later in the game is kind of nice. Right, like we play an Inside Source and its detective ends up dying, then we've got a 1/1 sitting there if we have no other detectives on board. making that 1/1 a 3/1 makes it actually trade into disguise cards and other stuff, and then it can actually do attacking and blocking. Same with our random dorks like Rebel Belt Maverick that just hits the board and then stops being relevant as soon as a 2/2 hits the board. Well, if we've got a haunch, it can still do things. Whereas if we have like an Airtight Alibi, that's only going to make one of those cards relevant. But the haunch, if we've got the extra mana and the game goes long, we can move it around over and over. I don't know. It's not like a great card. I'm not super excited about it, but it's the 23rd playable. Whatever we put in is not going to be great. I'm not going to be that excited about. So we are going to bump up the green count quite a bit. Probably just swap the green with black, go to 6 and 1 here. See how that looks with the counts. 12, 9, 4. And we're sitting at 7 green sources naturally and 8 white sources naturally. Green does give us the they went this way, but we don't have any double green cards in the deck until Glintweaver at 7 mana, so we don't need a second green source for quite some time. As long as we've got 1 green source by turn 3, we should be pretty good. Whereas with white, we have a lot of early white cards and an on the job. I guess there's a lot of early green cards too. Tipster, Inspector, Maverick. And they went this way. I kind of like the idea of like an even split between green and white, but I can't do that without cutting my one swamp. But if I cut my one swamp, I can't grab it off of they went this way. So one of these colors has to be one higher than the other. We got to be 8 of one and 7 of the other. I guess there are more cheap green cards than white cards by a tiny bit, because Haunch doesn't need to be played till we've actually played other creatures. So that leaves 1 white card at 2 mana or less, but 3 green ones. Not counting Get a Leg Up for the same reason we're not counting Haunch. It's not super relevant until there's a creature on board. But then once you get to 3 mana, like white makes up for it by having a million white cards versus 1 green card. So I don't know. I'm going to stick with the 8/7. I'll just go with that here. But I think this deck looks pretty good, and it's quite likely to be where we're at. I think it's better than the black-white build, which is surprising because I didn't think so at first when I looked at how few green cards we have, but the few that we have look like they're pretty great at getting this game started, so I like that quite a bit. And yeah, we will lock this deck in so I can go back and look at one more build that I'm interested in, which is the potential Boros aggro. We've got a bunch of good just red aggro cards, and of course all of the great white cards we've been looking at throughout the deck building. I think we're locked in on white with this sealed pool, just guaranteed. I don't think we had any Boros cards in multicolor. We did have a Granite Witness here. We have Quintorius. That's not going to do anything. Okay. So we'll do that, and we'll throw in the Granite Witness then. That is the cards. Actually, there were colorless cards we want. We're going to be aggressive, so we want all the 2-drops in the world. We do want the double Automaton for this deck. Sort our disguise cards out. Yeah, look at this curve. The Performer to go with all these disguise cards can rack up so much extra damage. This is definitely not a no witnesses deck. This is our worst deck so far for no witnesses. It's our best deck for Call a Surprise Witness. So, insta-cut no witnesses, and I kind of want to insta-cut connecting the dots and caught red-handed. Even in the most aggressive decks in the world, connecting the dots is real risky. It's just so slow, because if you top deck it late, you're just going to die, because you have to put this on the board, and then you have to attack several turns in a row before you draw any cards off of it. I mean, I guess in theory, if you top deck this in the late game, and you're... It's never going to happen. If you top deck this in the late game, you're in a board stall period. So I guess the worst case scenario when you top deck it late is you can chump attack with your whole board to draw 3 or 4 cards, but that's not great. Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of card that's only good in the dream situation where you can just be consistently attacking with everybody anyway, and then you can get a new hand. Yeah, I've really never been impressed by it, and its stats are horrific anytime I check its general win rate, so I think it's going to take a whole lot to convince me to ever run that card. Like, I think its stats are so bad in general on 17 lands, it's the kind of card that, like, lowers your chance of winning, like, 6% when you play it. Because so often you're just down a card for even trying to toy around with it. Okay, these creatures are all awesome. There's only 16 of them, but that's probably fine. Drop a land, a Karlov Haunch, or Demand Answers here. Well, we've got a 5-mana flip, we've got a 5-mana flip. So that adds to the top end a little bit. Yeah, we'll go ahead and drop a land for this deck. Although we basically never want to be spending mana on just affecting our hand. Like, this is the kind of deck that just every single card we play wants to impact the board in some way, clearing out a blocker or making more damage appear on our board, putting another creature out, something like that. So if we cut Demand Answers and just run a 17th land, then every single card in the whole deck is just a card that affects the board state in some way. Just full pile on aggro and try to take advantage of grindier decks that are playing some kind of cards that might search lands out of their deck or just draw cards and stuff like that, when literally everything we do impacts the board. I kind of like that idea. And that makes it so we, in general, flip these 5-drops up faster and just find that lethal in the end a little quicker. Yeah, I'll run a land over Demand Answers. I think that makes sense to me. That's fine. And this would be the Boros aggro build, and I'm at an impasse here because I think this deck looks exceptional. Galvanize, Makeshift Binding, and even Make Your Move are great ways to clear a path for all your aggressive creatures in this format against slower decks. On the job with 2 Inside Source and a Person of Interest and a 16-creature sealed deck with tons of 2 and 3 mana creatures is a massive finisher. So like, this deck in terms of just raw synergy and quick power is really there. But if we want a deck with just pure power level of individual card quality, we have our green-white splash black deck as well, where we have one of these strongest rares in the entire set in a Zoni. So it is fierce competition between these two decks, and I really think that they're both strong enough in their own ways to compete. Like, it would be interesting to see who wins in the matchup when these play each other. I feel like this deck beats the other deck every time, but the other deck would have much better matchups against some other slow deck that happens to have opened up a couple board wipes or something like that. So it's really matchup dependent which deck is better. So I think you could really just kind of coin flip this up because these are both so great, and just play with whatever you're feeling today. So do we want to be aggro? Do we want to be more mid-range grindy control-y? I've been doing a lot of aggro in draft lately, so it would be a bit of a change of pace to do a slower sealed deck, but if you look at our qualifier weekend decks, they were basically all just nice, grindy, 3-4 color mush splashy piles, so this deck would actually be the change of pace for sealed. So, I don't know. I like these both a lot. I might even bounce between the two, honestly. So I'm going to take a screenshot of this, a screenshot of the next deck, so I can rebuild and swap around if we want to try something different between rounds. But I think I'm going to start it off real simple, and we're just going to go pure aggro, see how much damage we can get out of cards like our Pyrotechnic Performer, our 10th District Hero. Just unload into our opponent's face and clear out their blockers with all this cheap removal. It feels like a solid place to start, and that's what we will do. All right, one final change to the deck. It looks like we had an Offender at Large sitting in the sideboard I somehow did not have in the deck. So we slapped that in and cut the Karlov Haunch for it, with the Offender at Large being yet another card we really want to hit that 5 mana for to flip up and end the game. So I think 17 lands is reasonable for a deck even this aggressive. So we will do that. So we've also got the double Automaton that can surveil and prevent some mana flood. So I think we're fine with 17 lands. A little bit of investigation as well to spend some extra mana. Yeah, we will call it a deck here. All right, here's a look at the final deck list for today. We did bring a Boros aggro draft deck to the sealed event, where hopefully we can just out aggro all of the slower, grindier decks. Now we do have a backup plan, which is our own grindy green-white splash black deck with a bomb or two, but we have some nice little aggro bombs that lead themselves to getting a ton of damage early. Cards like 10th District Hero, it's already an overstated creature for the mana cost, a 2 mana 2/3, but if we get some cards in our graveyard, collect some evidence, it's going to become massive in the late game. And then Pyrotechnic Performer can get a ton of damage as we are flipping up our disguises, while also just being another 2 mana 3/2, just a overstated creature for that cheap undercosted mana cost. So those can really lead the charge to get a bunch of damage in, and especially with big cards to flip up in the late game, Not really Bullrat Clan Basher. I mean, this is going to do a ton of damage and maybe end the game, but we're really talking about the big high power creatures to go with Performer, which is the double offender at large. We could get a lot of extra damage off that trigger, which would be sweet. And of course, these are also flexible game enders as well. They're finishers that we can drop for 5 mana on turn 5, or we can play them early on turn 3 to beat down with them and then flip them later. We've also got the classic Boros aggro stuff going on with 2 inside source and person of interest to help get a wide board state, and that wide board state means it's going to be hard for our opponent to block all our creatures, so On the Job can help get a lethal amount of damage in. We've got plenty of ways to keep the path clear with Galvanized, Makeshift Binding for cheap removal we can use on anything, and Make Your Move against the big creatures. Then we also have the Chase is On to help use our combat trick to eat up a big blocker and get that thing out of the way. So looks like a really solid Boros deck that I would have been happy to have drafted, so even happier to have it in sealed. We'll see how it plays out for us as we head into the gameplay. All right, our opponent is on the play for game number 1, so we are on the draw. We have got to start with a 2-drop into a 3-drop and a combat trick to trade up into a big blocker if they have one. They've started with a Molt of 5, but they are on a multicolor deck here with Underground Mortuary to start things off. There's a lot of great card advantage in the format that can bring them back in this game if we don't draw into a nice aggressive curve to go with these first couple creatures. And so far so good, 2 into 3 into 4 to get this game really rolling. They do have a blocker here already that I can't clear out with my Galvanize because of its ward ability. So that's a little awkward, but they didn't block the Consultant, so we get 1 free point of damage in there. We are definitely just racing in with everybody here. Full speed ahead. This card's good enough when we flip it, replacing itself with a 2/2 that we will flip if they block and then hold up a Galvanize for their next play instead of playing Tracker for the turn. Would like to have 3 cards on board for the Consultant, but I think this is a solid use of the turn as well. Still clearing a path, getting damage in. Unless they've got their own combat trick, +3/+3 trample on blocks. Soul Enervation. Sure, removal here. Alright, then Consultant's definitely never going to trigger anyway. Surprised they use it on Night Watch? I guess they must like their face down. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, now if we drew a 2-drop creature, we could get the Uber Punishment, play a 2-drop, and now I've got 3 creatures, so our 3/3 sticks around. That'd be sweet. But we don't. Alright, they're stuck here on 4 mana. And we are stuck here with way too much mana. Don't think either player is particularly happy right now. Chases on and crack the clue to draw a card. It's a thing. I could also Galvanize, but I feel like I want to save that for something scarier than this. Also just play a Tracker and pass, which is also fine. Yeah, I mean, if they block like this where they're not threatening to kill the Consultant, I'll just play another creature and dome them for 2. I got a feeling this face down is like a 5 mana 5/5 or something, like a Crocodile. Because they are avoiding trading it off, which means it must flip soon. What's a Fairy Snoop? Okay. Not what I was expecting, but perfectly fine. That's interesting. I wonder why they didn't block the 2/2 and stop 1 more damage then. They must have instants in their hand they were considering casting instead of flipping the Snoop. Mogus. Well, that's bad. Card is insane. One of the best uncommons in the entire set. If not the... I don't remember how its stats are doing right now, but they are high up there. Hold the combat trick up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can play the combat trick and play a face down performer, or I can play the galvanize and flip up a performer and get damage in, which is sweet. So, I mean, we are still all in on damage here. We're at 20 life. We can take whatever crackback is going to happen. Okay, I would kind of like to not have to deal with a fairy snoop anymore. But galvanize being able to kill a 4/4 by responding to the Killer Among Us trigger is incredibly tempting, so I think I'm just holding up galvanize still for now. Bounce off the snoop for a turn or two. Yeah, let's galvanize the killer. And I suppose they're down to 11 after we flip this, so we do also need to calculate how much damage we could be doing to them. Even if we don't kill their 4/4, since it'll be tapped anyway. Right, and then I just kill a different creature, so they have less blocks. It's still not going to be lethal for sure. Yeah, I feel like we are just trading Galvanize up into a 4/4 here. Yeah, let's do it. Then in case we draw some more stuff to spend all our mana on, we are just going to flip Performer up, even though we don't get to be as tricky with it. We don't have to make them fear some kind of giant disguise card. Just makes it easier to play everything. If we hit a 2-drop, I can chase this on, crack the clue, and play the 2-drop, stuff like that, by having all 7 mana available next turn. Okay. Well, we're definitely going to chase this on this turn, just because we really want to draw a card. And as I said, these kind of color trios, color pairs can do a really good job getting back in the game. Like, sure, they were down 2 cards from the Mole twice, but they're up 2 cards from Double Fairy Snoop, plus up a card from Killer Among Us. We had to trade a Galvanize into one of the 3 1/1s. So those cards alone and our opponents in the card advantage lead. I mean, the Flood doesn't help either, but they've had several good card advantage plays to really get out of their mulligan. All right, well, this is going to be solid. I could 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can put them to 3 life. There's a big temptation there, because then if we find anything that flips up as 3 power, they die to Performer. Still pretty dead to Performer. I think I'm keeping a wide board state. I don't have any 1 mana tricks, do I? No. Or 2 mana tricks. They're down to 6. Crack the clue. Okay. I mean, these lands might not be the worst. If they can't kill Pyrotechnic Performer, then having 8 mana on board next turn means if we top deck an Offender at large, they're just dead. Or a Bullrat Clan Basher, either of those, we flip up, deal 3 or 5 damage to them, and they're probably dead. And we just need to be able to find 3 damage with our current board. Unless they found a board wipe, and they've done some digging with these double fairy snoops here. Could also have just found a bunch of cheap blockers, maybe. That gives them a shot. We've got a lot of outs, though. Basically, any disguise card, if they don't kill Performer, is a huge game. On the Job's also insane. Removal for the Fairy Snoop is massive. Yeah, if they just play a bunch of cheap creatures, we have so many cards that are outs. Most of our non-lands, I think, are great here. And 10th District Hero is definitely on that list. It's going to be 6 evidence total to make our board indestructible. Well, we can do that. 6 evidence and 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. Yeah, so we can just do the whole thing. Right? Yeah, we can. Okay, so let's go hero. Pre-combat so that the rest of our board's indestructible. If they don't, like, counter this or something. But they have 2 mana up, so it'd be the counter unless I pay 2, which I think I can afford. I could afford to have this resolve, but I couldn't afford to give my board indestructible this turn, if they have that. If they have cheap removal for this, it is dead. Collect evidence 2, so hit the 2-drop. Boop. And then collect evidence 4, hit the 4-drop. Now the entire board's indestructible if they don't kill 10th District Hero. If they do have instant speed removal for 10th District Hero, that's kind of gross, but their blocks aren't even insane if we lose indestructibility. But that would be the biggest blowout they could have, is have the 1 in a black instant that destroys a creature with mana value 3 or less, kill Maleva, and all of a sudden we don't have indestructible anymore, but that's just going to be a couple trades and 1 bounce, which is fine. Yeah, that's fine. It's basically the same thing. It's slightly weaker than just fully killing it. Or fully killing her. Yeah, so we still... I mean, we lose Performer, which is sad, but we put them to 3 with 1 blocker on their board, and we know we have at least 1 more creature to slam on the board. That, with Pyrotechnic, Performer, and Grave, will be big-ish. It's going to be at least... It's going to be the 4/4 Vigilance. We don't have the evidence to make the rest of our board indestructible anymore, but still big. Okay, so they're playing off the top. Ooh, well now we just don't have evidence, because there's no way I'm exiling Performer with Call of Surprise Witness in hand. There's no reason to pre-combat if we're not getting indestructible. Yeah, so we just attack with these 2. They bounce 1 off and take 1 damage. Unless they top decked. They did surveil 1 card to the grave, but the other draw is blind. So I'm not going to play around anything here. Yep, we get our 1 damage in. I'm actually going to Call a Surprise Witness first. So that I can exile that to the collect evidence. Oh no, never mind. I forgot about the 1 ability they have in grave. Yeah, they could just do that. I should have tried to collect evidence first, and then that could have made them do that. I don't think they can actually respond to me trying to collect evidence, though. Yeah, that was a punt. That was a punt. We need to keep their graveyard abilities in mind. Oops. I got too preoccupied with having the perfect evidence. But really, if I could get them to blow their graveyard exile before I tried to do my reanimation spell, that would have been so much better. But I don't think it would have worked, which means I think I should have just held on to the thing basically all game, because I don't think they could respond to me collecting evidence. Well, that's a good draw. I could crack this to try to give indestructible, but I can also just try to hit for lethal. And with this many attackers, I feel like we're far likely to be lethal, or far more likely to be lethal if I just keep this around instead of going for the 10th district level up. They have to kill like a creature and a half here. So far, so good. Yeah. Okay, sloppy game, but still the absolute Boros steamroll there. I think the one really sloppy play was forgetting about their graveyard ability, the Gravestone Strider, so just hold on to the Call of Surprise Witness there in case of a board wipe. Maybe we get them to use their exile just to gain some life at some point. And then after they've used that, we can Call a Surprise Witness later, so... Yeah, that was super sloppy, that right there. But I think the rest of the game played out fine. Yeah, I don't think anything else we did was egregious. And obviously the deck idea, the deck build worked great. We were ahead the whole time, but they did mulligan twice, so that's certainly part of that. But just these creatures just played pretty well against most of theirs, so take it. We will be 1-0 heading into game 2. Here we are for game 2. Really nice start. Sanitation Automaton to try to surveil something for the Call of Surprise Witness is sweet, and then also just being able to recur the 10th District Hero if it gets killed is nice. I think we are going Automaton first to try to draw removal on weaker cards than 10th District Hero and wait to play the hero until we have evidence engrave to make it crazy. I don't despise hitting another land right now. 4th land means that we play 2 2-drops on turn 4. If we go Night Watch face down, we can flip it up and play a 2-drop. It's kind of a big game. It has to be another white source, though, so actually another mountain doesn't help. Right, another mountain doesn't do anything. With 4 white cards in hand, we need double planes to do 2 things in one turn, so we actually do surveil that into the grave. Not because we hate lands, but because we hate mountains over here. We live in the Great Plains, y'all. Alright, now we hit an inside source, so we just play that. Now that's a great surprise witness. That ends up trading off or dying. There's their 2/2, so inside source can't get it anymore, but our 2/2/2s sure can. Well, our 2/2 and our 2/1 can. Mono black from our opponent so far. Make your move. Doesn't do anything yet, but should be decently helpful later when they establish some kind of gigantic blocker that tries to stop things. There is no point in using Inside Source's ability because these both just trade on board already. Buffing it up just means they'll definitely trade instead of letting it through. And then we have not added anything else to the board, which is kind of weak. We did miss that second planes we were looking for. It's a little sad here. Just drop the Night Watch then, just 1 spell this turn instead of the double spell plan initially. No blocks, we take those. Still gotta keep curving out on them. Keep that pressure on. They've played 2-drop into 3-drop. We played 2-drop into 3-drop into 3-drop. So if they board wipe us, it's a 3 for 3. It's not the complete end of the world. I don't think it's overcommitting to just keep the aggro going. And certainly if they play a 4-drop, we're just going to keep committing. This is power-based, isn't it? Yeah, that sucks. Make your move as 1 off. Also, 4th mountain before 2nd planes sucks as well. So now I have to start using Inside Source on our detectives, but if I do that, I don't have the mana to play any other spells, because I need 3 for that and 2 for a spell. Yeah, this is yikes. If I Inside Source up the 2/2, it's just going to trade into a 2/1. It's not even going to like trade up into the Mortipede. They have solid blocks elsewhere. Just hold up Make Your Move, but then I don't do anything if they don't trigger Mortipede, which they have nothing in graveyard, so they're not going to trigger Mortipede. I guess we gotta keep adding to this board. Maybe we chump attack with something to try to get a flyer with Call of Surprise Witness, but I don't have any really good targets for that. I guess I just get a consultant here. Move on. Mortipede is the perfectly sized roadblock. It is exactly out of range of the Make Your Move. Alright, they found their second color. They can't use it this turn. It hits the board tapped, but they can use it next turn. Ooh, put it on Mortipede. Put it on Mortipede. Give the Mortipede a thinking cap. You know you want to. It's adorable. No, they're just holding up a couple mana. Fair enough. Ooh. Okay. 5th mountain is very useless. I guess not exactly, because now we can Inside Source and play a 2-drop. So that's something. I don't know if I really want to play a 2-drop, because the 2-drop I would play is 10th District Hero at this point. Just hold up the mana to flip our Disguise. And don't, like, commit any extra here to this board. Just trade our token into a Repeat Offender. Yep. Okay, there's no other detectives on our board. I mean, Consultant's a detective, but it would be a 3/3 vigilance if it attacks by itself, so it can't get in against the Mortipede still. And this is a soldier and not a detective. Delny. Creature control power 2 or less can't be blocked by creature's power 3 or greater. If an ability triggers, it triggers an additional time. Well, that could be bad. Thinking cap the Mortipede. Thinking cap the Mortipede. Thank you. You just gotta send psychic energy in your opponent's general direction. If I flip this up, I can't block the 2/2s anymore, but we're gonna send in, so let's flip it up. Perfect draw. We have found the planes. Let's have a party. Two cards left in their hand. They just played a Delny. I feel like board wipe in hand is unlikely. They could draw into one. If they do, we can call the 10th District Hero as a surprise witness and just have a 5/5 Vigilant Insane Bomb post-board wipe, so I think we're fine to commit it to the board, attempting to find lethal next turn. Okay, Perimeter Enforcer. Put a thinking cap on that for more life gain, I suppose. That is the play. Okay, their blocks still don't look great. We got a 2-mana spell in here? No, just an exactly 3 mana. Okay, so I can't pay perfectly here, but this is still definitely worth doing. It's a detective for Inside Source. Do I use the Inside Source? Yeah, I've got a 5th land to call a surprise witness post-combat if we need to. This already has Vigilance, so I guess we get Consultant Vigilance here. If I could target the Automaton, I would, because this running into Enforcer and not even trading is not great. Thanks to the lifelink, we're not anywhere close to lethal. Even if I send in the Automaton, they go block there, trade their chump, and they're fine. So I don't think it's worth the Automaton chump attack here. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Okay. Nightwatch cannot be called as a witness, so I'm just going to hold on here in case they have the Unscrupulous Agent to make me ditch a card. I'll ditch the planes. There's the Make Your Move for the 10th District Hero. Yeah, I like that card. Opponent has style. They got the chess moves. They're castling. Now we're down to 18. They're up to 4. Red Herring off the top turns lethal into mega lethal. And we have the mana to call a surprise witness after using Inside Source if we need to. And we don't need to. Just another absolute steamroll. Really good work from 10th District Hero again. Just our bomb rare doing bomb rare things. We are 2-0 heading into game 3. Here we are for game 3 on the draw. Could definitely flood out with this hand, starting with 4 lands. We don't want to draw too many more throughout the entire game, but Red Herring into that Person of Interest is great with a Galvanize in the middle, and we've got both of our colors. Like, it is not a beautiful opener, but it is not one we can mulligan. And there we go. Now we have 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, and the curve has begun. Playing against green, blue, black. Ooh, start with Lazov. I would like to delete that Lazov from existence, and Red Herring can't get in anyway against a 2/3, so we might as well delete it from existence before they have any chance of saving it with a counterspell or anything like that. Because if it sticks around and cards end up in graveyards, they can start investigating every turn, so it's easy enough for them to do. They just play an instant or sorcery, yeah, like a Deduce pre-combat, and they'll guarantee Lazov's doing its thing. There's a 10th District Hero, but we definitely want to start differently here. I'm going to Granite Witness first for mana efficiency because there's so many things we can do for 4 mana. Next turn, if I play Witness first, I could flip this up and play a Herring. Or I can play Person of Interest. And then on later turns, I can go Hero plus Herring, stuff like that. Alright, so they're just digging. 10th Inside Source, not 10th District Hero. Let's get 2 creatures down this turn, whatever we do. So Hero plus Herring or just Person of Interest. Green, blue, black. There is a black board wipe. They have spent their early turns just drawing cards. I think I really want to keep the pressure on. It's only 2 more damage if I red herring instead of Person of Interest, so I guess I can Person of Interest and be a little more resilient to a board wipe than had I went herring and hero here. This is also just as good against a counter spell, because now they don't counter hero. Because I would have had to go herring first pre-combat to get the 2 damage in, and then hero post-combat. Oh god, that's a busted mythic. It's a factor fiction for an incredible draw spell that also leaves them with a creature. So it's a 3-for-1 every time, no matter what. Card is back-breaking. So we give them a Nervous Gardener, a Forest, and a 3-3, or we give them a Forest Island, a Case, and a 2-2. But the Case can make that 2-2 a 4-4 then. Yeah, this is just horrendous. This card is so strong. And the fact that they main phased it is helpful, because they would have just like eaten an attacker if they didn't. Just eat our red herring. Guess I just give them the 2 cards and the 3-3. This kind of blows. Ooh, Offender at Large. Offender at Large is kind of sweet. So, what's the play here? If I get the Offender at Large on board, I can trade up into this 3-3. I can also just trade Granite Witness for the 3-3 already. But I could flip it up and get a wide board state playing an Inside Source, then Offender at Large next turn to get another creature attacking. Could get the 10th District Hero started. There's the 2 drop, there's the 4. Level this up to the indestructibility, and we are just attacking all game long. So 4 mana on it this turn, and then more next turn. They're green, blue, black, though, so they probably can find a way to kill it. I kind of like trying to get 10th District Hero going, and maybe getting them to use removal on something else, where dropping a Fender here looks quite appealing. Or just making a really wide board. I'm going to see if I can get them to cash in removal on Offender. They do go for the trade, so that was going to be a trade at any point. 3-2 flyer trades with 3-3 flyer. Would have preferred they didn't, but obviously don't have a say over that. So here's a face down. Could be massive, but it is just the Nervous Gardener that they grabbed. Grab another land, whatever they need. Really sad we didn't open up our own Nervous Gardeners in the sealed pool. Part of what made our fixing a little bit weaker and made the green, white, black build look a little bit less appealing. We didn't open up any Nervous Gardeners or Topiary Panthers. Just one they went this way for green fixing. Alright, they cashed in the removal. On the Offender, if they have removal, if they have more removal, they have more removal. 7 mana to fully level this up right now. I top deck a land, I could fully level it all in 1 turn. And also just red herring and level 2 it in the same turn, setting up to make it bigger next turn. I'm really surprised. I guess they just need to buy time to draw into their bombs. This is sealed where you can open 10 bombs in a set now. So this game has probably gone on more than long enough that we are not favored. I've only got 2 cards left. They have 1,000,000 because everything they've played has been a 2-for-1. Actually, not true. Just Intrude on the Mind was busted, basically. Yeah, and they just still have removal. Okay. What would win, Intrude on the Mind or 10th District Hero? It is Intrude on the Mind. Now we are completely out of the game. Big enough to trade into Tusker if nothing else. Not super appealing, but probably better than a blind draw. It's too bad Gruul doesn't have many detectives. If it was a detective and we could buff it with Inside Source, that'd be sweet. Okay, yeah. You got me. Wow, their seal pool is incredible for multicolored. They have Tusker too. Like, not only do they have the Nervous Gardener and the on-color duels, but they have a card from the list that is incredible fixing. Because they can cycle that, grab whatever basic they need, and draw a card. Very, very good card for sealed. Still chilling, still dying, you know how it is. Got an 8 here, but I don't have the mana to flip this anymore. Still got to deal with a Glint Weaver. This has to deal with one of these, this has to deal with the other, and then we try to get ahead. If I deal with the Glint Weaver, I can cash in a little damage right now, but then I have to chump. Kind of have to chump either way, but I'm threatening to block Glint Weaver well if I just deal with Tusker now. Is this the green, blue, and X counter? That's just GG if it is. Thing is insane and sealed. It looks like it is. Just counter unless we pay 7 and put like 7 counters on Maverick, just have 3 gigantic threats. Alright, well, I don't think that game could have lined up any more poorly. There were definitely a lot of decision points in that game. Like, we could have played different creatures over the creatures that we did play, but I think this game ends the same way every time. They just had every piece of interaction at the right time. Don't think we ever changed the outcome of this one. You can go to 1 there. Wait, no, I can't. I can go to 1 there and chump block, but I am still 1 mana off from actually killing their biggest creature and trading with the Clan Basher, because I don't have 8 mana. I need 3 for this and 5 for that. So I was going to say I could kill 2 of their creatures and go to 1. No, I can't. I can kill 1 creature, chump, and go to 1. Jesus. 2 and 1, heading into game 4. Here we are for game 4 on the draw again. We are definitely hoping for those instant coin flip wins of being on the play each game. Don't quite get there on this one, but our hand is still real aggressive, and we love that. Mirror match, let's go. I feel like our deck's loaded enough to take the mirror. Mirror match, whoever's on the play is pretty heavily favored, so there's that. Now we have to hope they don't have Call a Surprise Witness, but I do kind of need to kill this thing immediately before they have evidence for it. They could play a Galvanize with our own to have 2 evidence engrave, then make this a 4/4, and I can never kill it from there on, so I can't afford to not instantly kill it. Which means not committing to the board this turn, which isn't ideal, but it's where we're at. Drone Smith. Okay, that card's fine. It's 1 extra damage a turn. Oh, it's actually really good with the Phantom to guarantee the flying heading in. The 2/3 body's also exceptionally bad for us because we're forced into the attack here. They do have to consider how important this card is. Do they want to lose that to a combat trick? Yes. Well, that sucks. A lot of great common combat tricks in the set, none in hand though. Probably the worst I think our red herring's ever going to be because we can't afford to play anything after cracking it here. I could play a face-up performer, but that's quite bad because then they know not to attack in with Drone Smith. I think I just go down a card here, honestly. I'm actually going to just rip this 10th District here out of here so I don't have to worry about potential Call of Surprise Witness Graveyard Recursion. There's a face down. And Tracker still holds off Drone Smith. Or trades, that's cool. If they have their own trick, GG, man. Savior for lifelink? Okay, that's fine. Cool. If we can get this game to last, we are still ahead like a card or two, so we are favored. They're basically playing off the top already. Build a permanent flyer. Oh my god, they drew all action. They drew all action. That's a 3/3 on this board because they hit all creatures. 4/4 blocker and a 3/2 performer face up is a thing. 4/4 blocker against the 3/3 is definitely a thing. If this is Offender at Large, we're dead. If it's anything else, we're probably fine. Do dislike not getting to cash in damage off the performer, but we need to stabilize here. Oh, yeah, Granite Witness is also pretty bad. Not as bad as Offender at Large, but not good. Take 1 more damage here to potentially make Consultant just 1/3 on future blocks. Be pretty bad. Go to 6. 1 more damage is dead to 2 turns of Granite Witness, though. Right, if I do this and I take 5, I'm at 7. That's 3 Granite Witness hits to kill me, which is a lot more. But they only need to play like 1 creature and then I still die in 2 turns because the flying from Phantom. Oh man. I'll go to 6. I feel like they're pretty likely to be able to play more creatures. To trigger the Phantom and still kill me real quick. Alright, we need Call of Surprise Witness, or Makeshift Binding, or Make Your Move. Or On the Job. Yeah, there's a face down, which means we would be at 2 life here if I let them keep the Market Watch Phantom anyway. If I let them keep Phantom, they play that pre-combat, I take 5 that turn instead. I guess I wouldn't be at 2, I would just still be at 3. So I'd still die to Granite Witness here and lose, which is where we're at, because we hit all lands. Probably could have got there on the play, honestly. The tempo difference there was huge. But I don't think there's anything we could have done with the cards we had to get there. RIP. 2 and 2 it is. Okay. Okay. Seems good. I'm still pretty confident in our deck selection here. I feel like our green-white splash-black deck would have been even more crushed that round, and it still would have lost in our first loss. We can't really beat that draw 2, get a 3/3 flyer kind of card advantage swing. Rakdos from our opponent this time around. Rune Brand Juggler is the first play. Could insta Galvanize to grind out a long game here. I'm only getting 1 damage a turn off Consultant anyway, and I have Makeshift Binding for their next threat, so I'm going to instant Galvanize. There's a Face Down, which I can block with a 1/3. Be like a dog walker and we trade, which is fine. Yeah. That is a-okay. Drop a tracker, see if we pull out cheap removal from our opponent. So that 10th District hero is more likely to live. Could play Herring and Hero now. It's an option too. Now let's play it out differently this time. Let's just go full aggro and not play around any removal. Just play our best spell every turn. Because played around removal the last couple games and just super died, so let's try it the other way. And then super die this way. Just play our most impactful plays ASAP. Of course. We're damned if we do, damned if we don't. It is the wrong decision every time. Okay, well that means we were we were screwed regardless. Wow. Yeah. Even if we fully leveled up the 10th District hero, it just dies to collect evidence. They got murder still too? For the tracker? Is that what this triple black is? Nope, it's a face down. We get to keep a creature. Let's go. Still think we could take this game, the makeshift binding being pivotal in that. My technician is pretty good. They aren't on white, so they shouldn't have anything that like really destroys us. Thanks to them having a wide board state. There's not a lot in red that like buffs your entire board. They could have fuss and bother, which would just be fuss for a +1/+1 counter on the whole board. We would die to that. But based on their colors so far, it seems unlikely in red-black that they're running it. A lot of face downs. Oh, 14 life. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like 7, 8, 9. On the crackback. If I attack it and they don't block at all, probably play a bystander hold up chases on. If they block my face down, I flip it. Fine. Cool. Last card is shock. Last card is not shock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage on board. So they have our life total, but Makeshift Binding wins the race. Raw Farm Mortipede. I'll exile that with the binding to clear the path. If they block Basher with that and I make it a 6-power double striker, I deal 4 to Mortipede and 8 to their face. Maybe I try to Chases on lethal. Feels safer to not try to do that, but I think it's also still perfectly safe because we're going to kill 2 of their creatures no matter what and then still hold a blocker up. And it could just end the game immediately, which is worth not giving them another top deck, potentially. Lethal Trample. Alright, exact Lethal Trample it is. We are 3-2 heading into game number 6. Come on, let's be on the play. We're on the draw. And we have no white source, but we have 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop. Play one of the red disguise cards first. Arena dislikes me at least a little bit today. I feel like Basher first could be kind of sweet, because if we get that flipped up and then hardcast an Offender at large and buff the Basher, that's so much damage later in this game. Playing against green-red. Oh, come on, man. Now we cannot win, period? 5th mountain? So if I trade into their face down, they flip it up and get their big 5-4 or 7-7 or whatever that is. And if I don't block it, they draw another card, so they're going to be miles ahead in card advantage, and also I can't attack into a 4-4, so we're just going to get Yaris out of the game. Even if we had perfect mana. Oh, Lord Almighty. Amogus has entered the chat. Oh my god, and they have haste from Yaris. Killer Among Us with haste. Just draw another card. They kill 2 of my creatures. And they can stack in a way where they do 1 damage to bystander and 3 to the other so that I don't even investigate if I want to kill the 4-4. Oh, man. I could just take 6, I guess. I'm gonna draw my card. I'm just gonna start chumping. Okay, we can desperately hope they play around this flip being an Offender at large, in which case they don't block the person of interest with Yaris. They either don't block it or they block with 2 1/1s. And then maybe Offender at large on a Bullrat Clan Basher finds random lethal. That is straight up our only hope. We just crumpled a 1 removal spell and they've drawn 2 extra cards this game already. And played no removal yet. Yeah. Alright. Let's just see how screwed we were the whole time. Show me the flip. Nice. Good God, dude. Good God. It's 3 chumpers, I guess. Not dead yet. Two chumpers lives if they don't play another creature, but any creature they play has haste, so Just thinking, like, if they don't play another creature, if we can keep our face down on board till next turn, then we might, again, have the slightest chance of just surprise. This is 7 more damage than you thought. Maybe you're dead. But even then, 7, 8, 9. 9 is not 10. That's still not lethal if we have to chump with both of these, which we will. So we don't even find a lethal crackback with a flipped up offender that's not summoning sick. So I guess we just play the chumper. Classic hasty 6/6. And they're at 16 now. Gains life too. And they know I have to block 3 creatures to not die. Which means I don't even get to kill anybody here, because yeah, I could do this and not die, but if I do that, I still lose all my creatures anyway. Alright, well, I really don't think there was anything we could do there. Our first couple losses, I might have played around removal a little too hard and just should have just thrown my rares under the bus as meat shields. Like, just slam them down, get aggressive, curve out as well as we can with as big of creatures as possible. Maybe we just gave our opponents a little bit more time to stabilize and get to their powerful plays there. Because that is one of the things that I think I probably need to work on. Is there's a really good player, Kyle Rose, the Ham TV, if you've ever heard of him. And if you watch him play in his drafts on stream or anything like that, you will see him just treat the most powerful rares in the world as just little meat shields sometimes. Like, sometimes it's just what the course of the game needs, you know? Like, part of the power of having really good 2-drop rares, even if they do get so big and so powerful later, like the 10th District Hero, is that you can just curve out with them as really strong creatures. So maybe we should have just curved out with our stronger creatures and just started with 10th District Hero over Seasoned Consultant. Maybe, like, it stacks up into enough damage if we do things the other way around, or maybe because they have to interact early instead of playing their own creatures, maybe that slows that Boros matchup down enough for us to turn things around and try to take the lead there. Like, that's all I can really think of. I don't think we made any egregious mistakes outside of the games that we won anyway. I don't think there was anything in the losses that we did super, super wrong. It was just like maybe just going full tempo and just trying to play the best cards, period. Gets us the slight edge we need to still have a chance there, but I mean, our second and third loss felt really, really unwinnable. No matter what we did. When we lost to the Make-a-Thopter draw 2 or 3 cards thing, and then just all of the efficient removal and great fixing and stuff like that. I don't know what we could have done there. And then, obviously, the very last loss as well. I mean, they were just on the play and curved out super well. So, I mean, that was the other thing. We were on the draw a lot today, and I think every single one of our losses was also on the draw. Would have helped us a whole ton to be on the play and just gain that natural tempo of speeding things up in our direction a little bit. Flip things up, put our opponents on the defensive instead. Can go a long way. Yeah, again, I'm pretty happy with this deck. I think this is tied with the green-white-black deck as the potential strongest deck in the sealed pool, and actually, after playing a little bit and looking at how we lost those games, I think this deck is just the best deck in the sealed pool, because I think the losses would have been even worse unless we had exactly a Zoni in hand with the green-white-black deck. Any other hands out of our green-white-black decks just get steamrolled even harder than the Boros deck got steamrolled. So, yeah, I don't think there was a ton we could do. I'm pretty happy with the deck we built. Maybe it could have cut a land. We did flood out a little bit, but we also got stuck on lands one game. Just happens. Yeah, a land for a Crovat Haunch would have been fine. That is an option. It's maybe a slightly better build, but again, it was a lot of flood, and dropping down to 16 over 17 doesn't change your odds of drawing lands that much, so I don't think that really changes the outcomes of any of those games, or that can be classified as a massive punt or an egregious decision either. Yeah, just a bunch of really minor decisions that maybe could have added up, and a lot of games that just felt like it's pretty unlikely that they were winnable even with perfect plays, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe the full tempo, throwing the rares under the bus, just getting things rolling could be enough in one or two of those. Maybe one less land, having a Crowvod Haunch changes one of those. Just doesn't feel like our day overall. Doesn't feel like our day. That is a 3-3 average record in the very competitive event, which is really not bad in an event where everyone is trying their hardest to win and all the competitive players are coming out of the woodwork. To enter the event, a 50-50 record isn't horrible, but the reward is we're going to leave with our tail between our legs and absolutely nothing back for our 25,000 gold. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and are interested in seeing more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. Other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.